In the heart of Arlington, Virginia, a routine traffic stop is about to expose years of systemic corruption within its police force. Major David Harrison stands motionless as three officers approach his vehicle, their hands hovering over their weapons. They have no idea that the man they're about to wrongfully arrest is the Pentagon's leading expert in internal affairs investigations, with a security clearance higher than the President's Chief of Staff. For 2 years, complaints about this police unit have been piling up on Harrison's desk: racial profiling, excessive force, falsified reports. Now, through a twist of fate, he's about to experience their misconduct firsthand. But these officers are about to learn a hard lesson. Sometimes the prey they think they're hunting turns out to be the predator they should have feared. This isn't just a story about injustice. It's about how one man's unwavering integrity brought down an entire network of corrupt cops in just 72 hours. The morning sun cast long shadows across Major David Harrison's study as he lifted the old family photo album from its shelf. Dust motes danced in the golden light, each particle a fragment of time suspended in the air. At 45, Harrison had spent more than half his life in service, first as an MP, then military intelligence, and now as the Pentagon's lead investigator for internal affairs. But today wasn't about duty. Today was about remembrance. He traced his finger across a photograph of his graduation from West Point. His father, Colonel James Harrison, stood beside him in dress blues, both men wearing identical expressions of pride and determination. 25 years later, David could still feel the weight of his father's hand on his shoulder, still hear the words whispered just before this photo was taken. "Remember, son, integrity isn't what you do when everyone's watching. It's who you are when no one is." Sarah's footsteps in the hallway drew his attention. His wife of 18 years appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, her dark hair touched with the first hints of silver at the temples. She knew what today meant. "You could have slept in," she said softly. "It's your first Saturday off in months." Harrison closed the album carefully. "Dad never took a day off from doing what was right. Neither can I. He'd be proud of you, David. The work you're doing at the Pentagon, the changes you're making. It matters." He nodded, thinking of the files accumulating on his desk. Complaints about a particular unit in the Arlington PD had been increasing over the past 2 years. Excessive force, racial profiling, suspicious financial transactions. The pattern was clear, but proving it was another matter entirely. "I should get going," he said, standing. "The cemetery's peaceful this early." Sarah stepped forward, straightening. His collar out of habit, though he wore civilian clothes today, pressed khakis and a blue Oxford shirt. "Be careful. Those officers you're investigating, power can make people dangerous. They're just uniforms who forgot their oath." Harrison replied, but he appreciated her concern. 23 years in service had taught him that the most dangerous enemies often wore friendly faces. He kissed her goodbye and headed for the garage. His restored 1967 Mustang, midnight blue with white racing stripes, was his one indulgence. His father had taught him to drive in a car just like this, spending countless weekends under the hood together, teaching him that patience and attention to detail were the foundations of excellence. The engine purred to life, its deep rumble, a familiar comfort. Arlington National Cemetery was only 20 minutes away, but Harrison took the long route, letting his mind wander through memories. His father had served 30 years, including 2 tours in Vietnam, before cancer took him 5 years ago. Every month, Harrison made this drive, not out of obligation, but because these quiet moments helped him remember why he'd chosen this path. The cemetery was nearly empty at this hour. Harrison parked in his usual spot and walked the familiar path to section 60. Morning dew soaked his shoes as he crossed the perfectly manicured grass, passing row after row of white marble headstones. Each one told a story of service, of sacrifice, of choices made in the name of something greater than self. At his father's grave, Harrison knelt and brushed away some fallen leaves. Colonel James Harrison, U.S. Army, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, beloved husband and father. The words were etched, deep in the stone, but the man they described ran deeper still in David's heart. "Morning, Dad," he said quietly. "Got something brewing at work? Big case? The kind that could shake things up, make real change." He paused, smiling slightly. "I can hear what you'd say. Do it right, do it thorough, and let the chips fall where they may." The sound of tires on gravel caught his attention. A police cruiser was making its way along the cemetery's winding road, moving slower than normal patrol speed. Harrison watched it pass, noting the unit number automatically. Old habits died hard. It was one of the units he'd been investigating. Standing, he brushed grass from his knees. "I'll make it right, Dad, whatever it takes." The drive home would take him through Arlington's busy streets, past the very precincts he'd been investigating. Harrison checked his watch. Zot 847. Sarah would be at her yoga class now, their daughter Amy at soccer practice. He had time to stop by the office, review those files one more time. What he didn't know, as he turned the Mustang onto Wilson Boulevard, was that his quiet Saturday was about to become anything but peaceful. Sometimes fate has a way of accelerating justice, of bringing hidden truths into the light, and sometimes the very people who think they're enforcing the law are the ones who need to be reminded of what it truly means to serve and protect. The first indication of trouble came in Harrison's rearview mirror, a patrol car's lights flashing to life. He checked his speed automatically, 32 in a 35 zone. A quick glance at his phone showed no missed calls. Registration and insurance were current. The Mustang's restoration was immaculate, down to the properly dated historical plates. No probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, just the kind of stop that had been cropping up in complaint after complaint on his desk. Harrison eased the Mustang to the curb, positioning it perfectly parallel. Through his side mirror, he watched 3 officers emerge from the patrol car, unusual for a routine traffic stop. He recognized Officer Michael Reeves from his case files, a 6-year veteran with 8 excessive force complaints in the past 18 months, all dismissed. His military training kicked in automatically, hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, engine off. Registration and insurance ready on the dashboard. No sudden movements. He'd conducted enough investigations to know how quickly these situations could escalate. License and registration. Reeves's voice carried that familiar edge of manufactured authority. The other 2 officers, Matthews and Chen, according to their nameplates, flanked the car, hands resting casually on their weapons. "Of course, officer." Harrison kept his movements deliberate. Telegraphed, "My registration and insurance are on the dashboard. I'm going to reach for my wallet now." "Just hurry it up." Reeves's flashlight beam swept the car's interior, lingering on Harrison's military straight posture. Harrison handed over his licenses, both civilian and military ID. Reeves studied them, his expression shifting subtly. "Step out of the vehicle, sir." The "sir" dripped with sarcasm. "May I ask why, Officer Reeves?" "I haven't violated any traffic laws." A moment of surprise crossed Reeves's face at the use of his name. His hand tightened on his flashlight. "Step out of the vehicle now, or we'll remove you." Harrison noted. Matthews shifting his position, trying to block the view from passing traffic. Chen had already unclipped his body cam. Standard procedure for their type of operation. Minimize witnesses, disable recording devices. "I'm going to comply," Harrison said clearly, knowing the dashcam would pick up his words. "But I want it noted that I'm doing so under protest, as this appears to be an illegal detention." "Out, now." Reeves stepped back, hand moving to his weapon. Harrison opened the door slowly, keeping his movements measured. The morning air had grown thick with tension. A few cars passed, slowing to watch the scene unfold. One young man had his phone out, recording. "Good. Hands where we can see them," Matthews barked, moving in closer. Harrison complied, standing straight, hands raised to shoulder height. His bearing was pure military, parade ground perfect. He could see it needling them. "Quite a nice car for this neighborhood," Reeves said, circling the Mustang. "Where'd you get it?" "It was my father's. I restored it myself." "Uh-huh." Reeves ran his hand along the pristine paint job. "You know, we've had reports of a vehicle matching this description involved in some activities." Harrison almost smiled. The same line appeared in dozens of complaints. "That would be difficult, Officer Reeves, considering this car hasn't left my garage in 3 weeks. I drive it once a month to visit Arlington National Cemetery, where my father, Colonel James Harrison, is buried. Today's that day." "You giving me attitude?" Reeves stepped closer, invading Harrison's space. "Because I'm not sure you understand the situation here." "I understand perfectly." Harrison met his gaze steadily. "Just as I understand that your body cams are off, that this stop has no probable cause, and that Officer Matthews is attempting to discourage witnesses." The change was instant. Matthews grabbed Harrison's left arm while Chen moved in on his right. Classic intimidation stance, practiced dozens of times on dozens of victims. "Face the vehicle," Reeves ordered. "Now we've got resisting, interfering with an investigation." "You have neither." Harrison's voice remained calm. "What you have is a serious problem, because in about 30 seconds you're going to run my credentials. When you do, several things will happen." The cold metal of handcuffs touched his wrist, but Harrison continued speaking, his voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "First, you'll receive an automatic alert that you've detained a federal officer. Then, you'll realize that I'm not just any federal officer, but the Pentagon's lead investigator for internal affairs, the same one who's been building a case on your unit for the past 2 years. The handcuffs froze mid-click. "Finally," Harrison said, "you'll understand that this traffic stop just gave me everything I needed to close that case." "Probable cause, Officer Reeves. It's amazing how it works both ways." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. In the distance, more sirens approached. But these weren't coming to help the officers. Harrison had pressed the emergency alert on his key fob the moment. He'd been ordered out of the car. Standard procedure for federal officers under threat. The handcuffs withdrew slowly. Harrison turned to face them, his expression not of triumph, but of deep disappointment. "Your sergeant will be here in approximately 2 minutes. Behind him will be my team from the Pentagon. I suggest you use that time to consider how many of your colleagues you're willing to protect. Because make no mistake, gentlemen, your careers ended the moment you lit up those patrol lights." The approaching sirens grew louder, and with them came the sound of justice catching up to those who'd forgotten their oath to serve and protect. Harrison watched the realization dawn in their eyes, and in that moment he heard his father's voice again. "Integrity isn't what you do when everyone's watching. It's who you are when no one is." Officer Reeves's face contorted through a series of emotions: shock, fear, and finally, a dangerous kind of desperation. Harrison recognized that look. He'd seen it countless times during investigations when corrupt officials realized they'd been caught. It was the look of someone who might do anything to escape the consequences of their actions. "You're bluffing," Reeves snarled, his hand tightening on his weapon. "Some Pentagon pencil pusher wouldn't be out here alone." "Check my credentials," Harrison replied calmly, noting how Matthews and Chen had started to edge away from their senior officer. Their body cameras might be off, but the young man across the street was still recording. More phones had appeared in passing cars. "Everything you need to know is right there in your system." Chen reached for the patrol car's laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. His sharp intake of breath told Harrison the verification had come through. "Mike," Chen's voice cracked slightly. "Mike, he's—" "Shut up," Reeves barked, but uncertainty had crept into his stance. The approaching sirens were getting louder. Harrison kept his hands visible, his posture non-threatening. 20 years of handling volatile situations had taught him the value of appearing calm while remaining ready for anything. "Your sergeant will be here in less than a minute. After that, federal agents. This can end one of two ways, Officer Reeves. Your choice. Reeves's radio crackled to life. Unit 47. Respond immediately. What's your status? The moment stretched, like a wire about to snap. Harrison watched Reeves's trigger finger, noting its slight tremor. Behind him, Matthews had taken 2 more steps back, already calculating his options. Last chance, Harrison said quietly. For all of you, the cover-up is always worse than the crime. A screech of tires announced the arrival of Sergeant Walsh, his unmarked car sliding to a stop behind the patrol unit. The heavy-set veteran officer emerged, face already red with exertion and stress. Reeves, stand down immediately. Walsh's voice boomed across the scene. He'd obviously received the federal alert and understood the gravity of the situation. But Reeves was beyond taking orders. In one fluid motion, he drew his weapon and aimed it at Harrison's chest. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Officer Reeves. Harrison's voice remained steady, even with the gun pointed at him. Your body camera is off, but there are at least 7 civilian witnesses recording this moment. Think very carefully. About your next action. More sirens. Black SUVs with federal plates appeared at both ends of the street, boxing them in. Harrison could see his team deploying. Agent Sarah Chen, no relation to the officer, taking up position with her rifle. Agent Marcus Rodriguez, moving to control the growing crowd of onlookers. Mike, don't! Officer Chen had backed completely away, hands raised. It's over, man, it's over. Matthews had already assumed a surrender position, kneeling with his hands behind his head. But Reeves stood frozen, gun still trained on Harrison, as federal agents surrounded the scene. You know what they'll find. Reeves's voice had dropped to a whisper, meant for Harrison's ears alone. The money, the deals, everything. I can't. You can, Harrison interrupted, taking a careful step forward. Because right now you're only facing corruption charges. That gun moves an inch, and it becomes attempted murder of a federal officer. Make the right choice, Michael. Something broke in Reeves's eyes. The gun wavered, lowered, dropped to the ground. As Agent Rodriguez moved in to secure the weapon and cuff the officer, Harrison saw tears streaming down Reeves's face. My kid, Reeves choked out. She's starting college next month. I only wanted to give her a better life, Harrison finished. I know, but you forgot the most important lesson you could have taught her, that integrity matters more than money. Sergeant Walsh approached, his face ashen. Major Harrison, I had no idea. Save it for the investigation, Sergeant. Harrison cut him off. Your entire command structure will be questioned. I suggest you cooperate fully. The scene had transformed into a full federal operation. Evidence teams photographed the Mustang and patrol car. Agents interviewed witnesses, collected phone footage. Harrison watched as Reeves, Matthews, and Chen were placed in separate vehicles. Agent Sarah Chen approached, tablet in hand. Sir, you'll want to see this. We've accessed their patrol car's backup camera system, the one they don't know about. 3 months of footage, all archived on a secure server. Harrison nodded. Get it to forensics immediately. And Sarah, make sure Officer Reeves's daughter's college fund is investigated. I suspect we'll find some interesting deposits. Already. On it, sir. She paused. You know this is just the beginning, right? These 3 aren't operating alone. I know. Harrison looked up at the morning sun, now high in the sky. Tell the team to get comfortable. We've got 71 hours left to clean up this department. And we're just getting started. As if to punctuate his words, another convoy of federal vehicles rounded the corner. The real work was about to begin. The Arlington Police Department's headquarters buzzed with barely contained chaos. Harrison stood in the chief's office, now temporarily his command center, studying the web of connections spreading across the digital display. 3 hours had passed since the traffic stop, and each minute revealed new layers of corruption. Sir, Agent Rodriguez entered, carrying a manila envelope marked with red security stripes. You need to see this. We found it in a hidden safe behind Sergeant Walsh's desk. Harrison accepted the envelope, noting its weight. Inside, he found a Pentagon security clearance document, his own, dated 3 months ago. The implications were clear. They'd been watching him too. They knew who I was, Harrison said quietly. This wasn't a random stop. Rodriguez nodded, grimly. There's more. The document has classified markings that aren't in our standard format. Someone inside the Pentagon is helping them. The room seemed to grow colder. Harrison had suspected the corruption reached beyond the police department, but this was different. This was personal. Chief Thomas Parker burst into the office, his face flushed with indignation. Major Harrison, this is an outrage. You have no authority to— Actually, Chief Parker, Harrison interrupted, holding up the security document, this gives me every authority, especially since your department has been conducting illegal surveillance on a federal officer. Parker's face went from red to white in an instant, his eyes fixed on the document, recognition flickering across his features before he could hide. I don't know anything about that. Sit down, Chief. Harrison's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Let's talk about the weekly deposits to your Cayman Islands account, the ones that coincide perfectly with certain drug shipments passing through your jurisdiction. Parker's legs seemed to give out, and he collapsed into a chair. You don't understand. They said they had connections, power, that crossing them would be unfortunate. Who are they, Chief? Before Parker could answer, Harrison's secure phone buzzed. The message was brief. Pentagon breach confirmed, level 7 clearance, multiple suspects. Harrison's jaw tightened. Level 7 meant senior staff, possibly even general officers. The corruption went higher than he'd imagined. Rodriguez, get me Deputy Director Collins on a secure line. And find out everything you can about Chief Parker's contacts in the last 6 months. Every meeting, every call, every email. Sir? Rodriguez hesitated. Collins is the one who issued the alert about the breach. A piece clicked into place in Harrison's mind. Collins had been surprisingly interested in his investigation lately, asking detailed questions about his progress. Questions that, in retrospect, seemed designed to track his movements. Change of plans, Harrison said. Get me Director Matthews. Directly, no intermediaries. And Rodriguez, trust no one outside our immediate team. As his agent left, Harrison turned back to Parker, who had begun to sweat profusely. Start talking, Chief, because right now you're looking at federal conspiracy charges that will put you away until your grandchildren have grandchildren. You don't know what you're up against, Parker whispered. They're everywhere. Police, Pentagon, Congress, it's bigger than you can imagine. Try me. Parker leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. 3 years ago I was approached by a group. They called themselves the Guardians. Said they were protecting American interests, keeping the country safe from threats both foreign and domestic. The money was just the beginning. They wanted control of key police departments, military installations, government offices. Harrison's mind raced. A shadow organization infiltrating multiple levels of government, using corruption and blackmail to build their power. It explained the pattern he'd been seeing in police departments across the country. Names, Harrison demanded. I want names. Parker shook his head. They'll kill me. Chief, right now I'm the only one who can protect you, but that offer expires in the next 30 seconds. The chief's resistance crumbled. He pulled a phone from his pocket, not his official one, but a sleek, unmarked model. Everything's here. Meeting dates, contact protocols, financial records. I kept it just in case. As Harrison took the phone, his own device buzzed again. Another message from the Pentagon. Deputy Director Collins, found deceased, apparent suicide. Harrison's expression hardened. This wasn't just corruption anymore. This was war. Rodriguez, he called. His agent appeared instantly. Get the chief to a secure location, full protective detail, and get me everything you can from this phone. As his team sprang into action, Harrison moved to the window, looking out over the city he'd sworn to protect. Somewhere out there, a shadow organization was watching, probably already planning their next move. They had power, money, and influence. But Harrison had something more valuable, the truth. And in the next 68 hours, he was going to make sure that truth came to light, no matter the cost. Harrison's secure command center hummed with urgent activity. Screens displayed surveillance feeds, data analyses, and personnel files while his team worked with practiced efficiency. The initial incident report from the morning's traffic stop lay open on his tablet, a masterpiece of deception that would have buried the truth if he hadn't been the target. "Major," Agent Sarah Chen approached, her expression grave. "We've compiled all departmental incident reports from the past 3 years. The pattern is disturbing." She pulled up a series of documents on the main screen. Each report followed the same template. Routine stop. Suspect became aggressive. Reasonable force applied. But the timestamps told a different story. "They were operating on a schedule," Harrison observed, noting the precision timing. "Every major drug shipment through Arlington was preceded by a series of these stops." "Harassment as camouflage," Chen agreed. "They created so much background noise that real enforcement couldn't distinguish legitimate incidents from their cover-ups." The door opened and Rodriguez entered with a young officer in tow. "Sir, this is Officer Jenny Martinez. She's been trying to report irregularities for months." Martinez stood straight, but Harrison could see the tension in her shoulders. "Major Harrison, I documented everything." She placed a USB drive on the desk. "Dates, times, names. But every time I filed a report, it disappeared." Then the threats started. "Tell him about last week," Rodriguez prompted gently. Martinez's hands trembled slightly. "My daughter's daycare received an envelope. Pictures of her playing in the yard, walking to the car. The message said, 'Good mothers. Keep their children safe.'" Harrison felt a cold fury build in his chest. "Officer Martinez, I promise you, the people who did this will face justice." "Sir," Chen interrupted, her phone displaying an urgent alert. "Local news is running the story. Someone leaked footage of the traffic stop." The nearest screen switched to a news broadcast. Amateur video showed Harrison facing down Officer Reeves, the confrontation playing out in high definition. Social media metrics scrolled across another screen. The story was spreading fast. "They're trying to control the narrative," Harrison said. "Get me public affairs. We need to—" A thunderous explosion rocked the building. Alarms blared as emergency lights bathed the room in red. Through the window, Harrison saw smoke rising from the evidence lockup across the street. "Chen, secure that USB drive. Rodriguez, get Martinez to safety." Harrison's commands cut through the chaos. "All personnel, emergency protocol 7. His team moved with precision born of countless drills. As sprinklers rained down in the hallway, Harrison's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You should have stayed behind your desk, Major. Not everyone wants the truth too." "Come out!" Harrison typed a quick response. "You just made a serious mistake. Now I know you're scared." The reply came instantly. "We'll see who's scared when the next bomb goes off." Harrison forwarded the exchange to his cybersecurity team before addressing the room. "Listen up, they're desperate, which means we're close. Martinez's evidence, the traffic stop footage, Parker's phone. They're trying to bury it all." "Sir," Chen called out, "social media's exploding. Hundreds of people are coming forward with similar stories of police harassment. It's beyond their ability to contain." Harrison allowed himself a grim smile. "The Guardians thought they could control the narrative through fear, but they didn't count on the one thing more powerful than fear: public outrage." His phone rang. Director Matthews himself. "Harrison, the Pentagon's in lockdown. We've detained 3 senior staff members attempting to access classified files." "About your investigation, how deep does this go?" "All the way, sir, but we've got them running scared. Request permission to expand the operation." "Granted. Whatever you need. Just watch your back, David. Collins was a friend for 20 years, and they got to him." Harrison ended the call and surveyed his team. Despite the explosion, despite the threats, they remained focused. "Ready. Chen, get me everything on those detained Pentagon officials. Rodriguez, coordinate with FBI on securing additional evidence locations. Martinez, he turned to the young officer, are you willing to go on record? She straightened, fear replaced by determination. Yes, sir. All the way. Good, because in the next 48 hours we're going to dismantle this entire operation. The Guardians thought they could hide in the shadows. Time to shine a light so bright they'll have nowhere left to run. As his team dispersed to their tasks, Harrison studied the incident report one last time. In trying to stop him, they'd given him exactly what he needed, proof that no one was beyond the reach of justice. Not corrupt cops, not shadowy organizations, not even generals. The game had changed, and now they were playing by his rules. 6 hours after the explosion, Harrison stood in the temporary command center they'd established in a secure FBI facility. The internal affairs database projected on the wall told a story more damning than he'd imagined. Hundreds of complaints, systematically buried, stretched across 5 years of meticulous corruption. Cross-reference these dates, he instructed Agent Chen, who was deep in the digital forensics. Focus on financial transactions around each buried complaint. Chen's fingers flew across the keyboard. Already on it, sir. The pattern is... Wait. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Major, look at this. The screen filled with a complex web of transactions. Each dismissed complaint corresponded with deposits to multiple offshore accounts. But something else caught Harrison's attention. The amounts, he said. They're not random. Rodriguez joined them, fresh from interviewing Officer Martinez. They're using a code. Each deposit amount corresponds to a specific type of operation. 23,000 for drug shipments, 45,000 for weapons, 37,000 for human trafficking. It's their ledger, Harrison realized. They've been hiding their entire operation in plain sight, disguised as routine police corruption. The room's secure phone rang. Director Matthews again. Harrison put it on speaker. Harrison, we've got movement at the Pentagon. General Howard just called an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs, claiming national security concerns about your investigation. Harrison's jaw tightened. Howard had been on his radar for months, but proving anything against a 4-star general required ironclad evidence. He's trying to classify everything, Harrison said. Bury it under national security protocols. Exactly. You've got maybe 3 hours before he succeeds. Whatever you're going to do it fast. Harrison turned to his team. Chen, get me everything on Howard's financial history. Rodriguez, coordinate with Martinez. I want every officer who's ever filed a complaint against this operation in a secure location within the hour. Sir, Chen called out, her screen filling with new data. Howard's not just covering things. He's been running it. Look at these communication patterns. The display showed years of encrypted messages, all routed through a series of proxy servers. When decoded, they revealed a command structure that led directly to Howard's office. The Guardians, Harrison muttered. They're not just a criminal organization. They're a shadow government, using law enforcement as their private army. Rodriguez returned, tablet in hand. Major, we've got 23 officers willing to testify. And Martinez found something else, a hidden camera in her locker. The footage shows Walsh and Parker discussing operations directly with Howard. When? 3 days ago. They were planning something big, something called Operation Cleanup. Harrison's phone buzzed with another anonymous message. Too late, Major. Cleanup starts at midnight. Hope you've said goodbye to your family. A chill ran through the room. Harrison checked his watch. 20:47. Just over 3 hours. Chen, get protective details on all our witnesses' families. Rodriguez, alert. The lights went out. Emergency. Generators kicked in as alarms blared through the building. Sir! An agent burst in. FBI headquarters just lost power. Pentagon's dark. Police precincts across 3 states are reporting system failures. Harrison's mind raced. This wasn't just a threat. It was a coordinated attack on every agency investigating the Guardians. They're not trying to hide evidence, he realized. They're eliminating it, and anyone who might have seen it. The anonymous number called. Harrison answered on speaker. Impressed yet, Major? The voice was digitally altered, but carried unmistakable arrogance. Every server, every backup, every piece of evidence you've collected, all being erased as we speak. By morning, none of this will have existed. You're wrong, Harrison replied calmly, because you still don't understand what kind of man you're dealing with. Oh, and what kind is that? The kind who never keeps all his evidence in one place, the kind who learned counterintelligence from the best, the kind who knew you'd try something like this. Harrison nodded to Chen, who pressed a single key on her laptop. Across the city, hundreds of printers in police stations, government offices, and news organizations whirred to life. Every document, every transaction, every piece of evidence, flooding out in hard copy, impossible to erase. You see, Harrison continued, integrity isn't just about doing the right thing. It's about being smarter than the people trying to stop you from doing it. The line went dead. Harrison turned to his team, determination etched on his face. They thought they could erase the truth. Instead, they just helped us spread it. Now let's go get Howard before he realizes his whole world is about to collapse. The encrypted police department server yielded its secrets under Chen's expert touch. Even in the darkness, illuminated only by emergency lighting and laptop screens, the team worked with focused intensity. They had less than 2 hours before. Operation Cleanup was scheduled to begin. Got something, Chen announced, her face bathed in the blue glow of her monitor. Howard wasn't just coordinating with local police. Look at these server access logs. Harrison leaned in, studying the complex web of connections. DEA, FBI, Customs. They've compromised federal agencies too. Not compromised, Chen corrected, pulling up another screen. Infiltrated. They've been placing their people strategically for years. Every major law enforcement agency has Guardian operatives in key positions. Rodriguez returned from coordinating with the protective details. Sir, all witness families are secure, but we've got another problem. Martinez found a pattern in the financial records. The Guardians aren't just running drugs and weapons. He pulled up a series of shipping manifests on his tablet. At first glance, they appeared routine. Commercial cargo moving through normal channels, but the weight distributions were off. They're moving something else, Harrison said, seeing the pattern. Something they're not declaring. Nuclear material, Rodriguez confirmed grimly. Small amounts, carefully shielded. They've been building a stockpile. The implications hit like a physical blow. This wasn't just about corruption anymore. It was about national security at the highest level. Harrison's secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Director Matthews. Howard just left Pentagon, moving under heavy guard. Destination unknown. Chen, get me satellite coverage of all routes out of D.C., Harrison ordered. Rodriguez, coordinate with... The emergency lights flickered and died, plunging them into total darkness. Only their battery-powered devices remained functional. They're escalating the blackout, Chen reported, her fingers never stopping their dance across the keyboard. Power grids down across the entire eastern seaboard. In the darkness, Harrison's voice carried quiet authority. They're trying to create chaos, give themselves cover to move the nuclear material. Chen, what else can you pull from that server? Working on it. There's a hidden partition, heavily encrypted. Wait, her screen flashed with new data. Major, these aren't just operation records. This is their entire playbook. The server contained everything. Personnel files, operational protocols, contingency plans. The Guardians had grown overconfident, believing their encryption unbreakable. Found Howard's exit strategy, Chen announced. They've got a secure facility in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Satellite imagery shows recent construction, heavy security. Their fallback position, Harrison realized. Everything we need to know about their operation is on that server, and Howard's running there to coordinate their response. Rodriguez's tablet chimed with an alert. Sir, Martinez just sent something. Security footage from the police department. Armory, they're mobilizing. Full tactical gear, heavy weapons. Not just here, Chen added, monitoring emergency channels. Similar reports coming in from departments across 3 states. They're activating all their assets. Harrison studied the tactical display, mind racing through scenarios. The Studios had spent years building their shadow network, placing operators throughout law enforcement. Now they were calling in everything for one massive operation. "Get me a secure line to Director Matthews," he ordered. "We need to coordinate with every clean federal agent we can trust. The Guardians want chaos. Let's use it against them." As Rodriguez made the call, Chen's screen lit up with new alerts. "Major, I've cracked another layer of encryption. Found their personnel database. Full list of every Guardian operative, their positions, their orders." Harrison allowed himself a grim smile. In trying to erase their tracks, the Guardians had given them access to everything. Sometimes the best way to protect a secret was to hide it in plain sight, buried under layers of routine corruption. But they'd never counted on someone putting all the pieces together. "Send everything to our secure backup sites," he instructed. "Then start matching names against federal agencies. I want to know exactly who we can trust." "Already on it," Chen replied. "But sir, some of these names, they go higher than Howard, cabinet level." "Not surprising," Harrison said. "An operation this size needs political protection. Make a special file of anyone above department head level. We'll handle them separately." The secure line crackled. With Matthew's voice, "Harrison, Howard's convoy just turned west on I-66. 6 vehicles, heavy security. Local police are blocking pursuit." "They're heading for the mountain facility," Harrison confirmed. "How long until we can have federal response teams in position?" 2 hours minimum. This blackout's got everything in chaos." Harrison checked his watch. 22:17. Less than 2 hours until Operation Cleanup began. "We don't have 2 hours," he said. "Chen, get me everything you can on that mountain facility." "Rodriguez, find Martinez. We need her testimony on record before they can get to her. The Guardians think this blackout works in their favor, but they're wrong. In the dark, everyone's blind. Except us, because in the darkness, truth becomes the most powerful weapon of all, and Harrison's team had just found an arsenal of it. Inside the darkened command center, Harrison reviewed the contents of Sergeant Walsh's personal journal, a detailed record of the Guardian's payoff system that read like a who's who of corruption. The leather-bound notebook had been recovered from a hidden safe in Walsh's home, its pages filled with dates, amounts, and coded names. "Cross-reference these entries with the server data," Harrison instructed Chen. "I want to know every dirty cop, federal agent, and politician on there." "Payroll!" "Already mapping it," Chen replied, her screens displaying an intricate network of connections. The patterns fascinating. They structured it like a terrorist cell system, each group isolated, minimal contact with others. Rodriguez entered, followed by Officer Martinez. "Sir, we've got movement at the police staging areas. They're mobilizing under cover of the blackout." Harrison studied the tactical display on his tablet. Red dots indicated Guardian-controlled units across the region, all converging on key infrastructure points. "They're not just covering their escape," he realized. "This is a coup. They're using the chaos to seize control of critical facilities." Martinez stepped forward, her face illuminated by the electronic glow. "Major, there's something else. The coded names in Walsh's journal, some of them match a series of classified military exercises from the past year." Harrison's mind raced. They weren't exercises, they were dry runs. Chen's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Confirmed. Each exercise targeted the same facilities they're moving on now. They've been rehearsing this for months." The journal's entries painted a clear picture. The Guardians had built their network methodically, using a combination of bribes, blackmail, and ideological recruitment. Each corrupt officer or official became another node in their web, another asset in their shadow army. "Look at these amounts," Rodriguez noted, examining the financial records. "Regular payments, but with spikes around specific dates. Major operations." Harrison checked the most recent entries. "The payments stopped 3 days ago. They're cutting ties, erasing their tracks." "Sir," Chen interrupted, "I've got a match." on one of the coded names. Patriarch appears in both the journal and Howard's personal communications, cross-referencing with the personnel database. Oh God, she turned her screen toward Harrison. The identity of Patriarch hit him like a physical blow. Senator William Morrison, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. This goes all the way to Congress, Harrison said quietly. Morrison's been running interference, making sure no one looked too closely at Howard's activities. Martinez's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from her contacts inside the department. They're starting to move the nuclear material, multiple vehicles, different routes, using the blackout for cover. Harrison studied Walsh's journal one last time. The final entry caught his attention. Contingency activated. All assets in position. Patriarch confirms Operation Cleanup is authorized. God forgive us. They're not just hiding evidence anymore. Harrison said, this is what they've been building toward, a coordinated takeover under the cover of a national emergency. By morning, they'll control key infrastructure, have their people in position, and be holding nuclear material as insurance. What's our play? Rodriguez asked. Harrison moved to the tactical display. We use their own plan against them. Martinez, get your clean officers in position. Chen, start transmitting the evidence to every major news outlet. The blackout won't last forever. Rodriguez, coordinate with the federal response teams. We need to be ready the moment power returns. And Howard, Chen asked. He's running to the mountain facility to coordinate everything. Harrison checked his watch, 22:45. But he doesn't know we have this. He held up Walsh's journal. Every name, every plan, every contingency. Sometimes the old ways are the best. You can't hack paper. A distant explosion rattled the windows. The city's darkness was now punctuated by scattered fires. They're creating more distractions, Rodriguez observed. Let them, Harrison replied, because while they're focused on their coup, they've forgotten the most important lesson of shadow warfare. The darker it gets, the harder it is to see who's hunting you. He turned to his team, their faces determined in the electronic glow. The Guardians think they're taking control tonight. Instead, they're about to learn why you don't build a shadow empire on American soil, not while people like us are standing watch. The hunt was on, and this time they had everything they needed to bring the whole network down. The anonymous tip line records scrolled across Chen's screen, years of ignored warnings and desperate pleas finally seeing the light. Harrison had ordered them recovered from the department's backup servers, each call a testament to the corruption. They were fighting. Sir, Chen called out, pattern emerging in the tip line data, clusters of calls around specific dates, all reporting similar activities. They matched the journal's operation schedule perfectly. Harrison leaned in, studying the correlation. They couldn't suppress everything. People saw what was happening, tried to report it, and paid the price, Rodriguez added, reviewing incident reports. Every major tipster faced retaliation. Traffic stops, code violations, suspicious accidents. The command center hummed with controlled urgency. Outside, the blackout had transformed the city into a maze of shadows and emergency lights. Distant sirens echoed through the darkness. Update. From Martinez, Rodriguez reported. Guardian units are securing critical infrastructure points across 3 states, power stations, water treatment facilities, communications hubs. Harrison nodded grimly. Classic insurgency tactics. Control the essentials, control the population. He turned to Chen. Status on the evidence distribution. Ready to transmit the moment power returns. Every major news outlet, social media platform, and law enforcement agency will receive a complete dossier. They can kill some stories, but not all of them. A secure phone line crackled. Director Matthews' voice carried barely controlled anger. Harrison, Morrison just called an emergency session of the Intelligence Committee. He's pushing through authorization for emergency military deployment, citing terrorist threats. He's creating cover for Howard's forces, Harrison replied. When the power returns, they'll present themselves as the solution to the crisis they created. Worse, Matthews continued. They're painting your investigation as part of the threat. Howard's telling the Joint Chiefs you've gone rogue, trying to destabilize legitimate authority. A new message flashed on Harrison's screen from the anonymous number. Last chance, Major. Stand down now and your family lives. Keep pushing, and they die in the dark. Harrison's jaw tightened. Sarah and Amy were secure in a safe house, but the threat crystallized something in his mind. Sir, Chen interrupted, incoming from Martinez. Guardian units are moving on federal buildings. They're positioning for simultaneous takeover once the military authorization comes through. Harrison studied the tactical display, watching red dots converge on key positions. The Guardians had planned this for years, placing their people strategically, building their shadow army. Now they were ready to step into the light, as saviors rather than conspirators. Chen, get me everything on Morrison's movements in the past 24 hours. Rodriguez, coordinate with Martinez's clean officers. I want eyes on every Guardian unit. Already done, Chen replied. Morrison made 3 calls from a burner phone after leaving the capital. Location traces put him here. A blue dot appeared on the map halfway to the mountain facility. He's joining Howard, Harrison said. They're consolidating their leadership for the end game. Rodriguez's tablet chimed with an alert. Sir, Guardian units are starting to move the nuclear material. Multiple convoys, all heading west. Decoys, Harrison concluded. The real shipment will be with Howard. He won't trust anyone else with it. The anonymous line buzzed again. Harrison put it on speaker. Enjoying the show, Major. The digitally altered voice carried smug confidence. In 1 hour, we'll have military authorization. In 2, we'll control every major government facility in 3 states. By dawn, we'll be the only legitimate authority left. Still think you can stop us? You're right about one thing, Harrison replied calmly. This ends by dawn, but not the way you think. He turned to his team. They want to play in the dark? Fine. Let's show them who the real hunters are. Chen, activate Protocol Shadow. Chen's fingers flew across her keyboard, initiating a sequence. They'd prepared for exactly this scenario. Across the region, hidden surveillance systems powered up on independent batteries, dormant tracking devices activated in Guardian vehicles, emergency channels suddenly crackled with encrypted communications. They think the blackout blinds everyone equally, Harrison said, watching the data flow in. But we've been preparing for this darkness a lot longer than they know. Outside, the city remained dark, but in the command center, light was beginning to shine on every shadow the Guardians thought would hide them. The surveillance photos spread across Harrison's tablet told a story of desperation. Captured by Martinez's hidden cameras, they showed a series of clandestine meetings between Guardian leaders in the hours before the blackout. Howard, Walsh, Morrison, all of them gathered in a secure basement room beneath the police headquarters, planning their endgame. Timeline matches, Chen reported, analyzing the metadata. These meetings happened right after you accessed their encrypted server. They knew you were getting close. Harrison studied the images, noting the body language, the expressions. These weren't men executing a carefully planned operation. They were scrambling to contain a crisis. Sir, Rodriguez called out. First Guardian unit is breaking. Lieutenant Santos just contacted Martinez. He wants to talk. Location? Secure. A parking structure 3 blocks east. His team was tasked with seizing the federal courthouse. Harrison checked the tactical display. The courthouse was a crucial position in the Guardians' plan. Controlling it would give their actions a veneer of legal authority. Chen, maintain command. Rodriguez, with me. And get Martinez on site. They moved through the darkened streets. In an unmarked vehicle, emergency lights dark. The city had taken on an apocalyptic feel. Scattered fires casting orange glows against low clouds, the occasional burst of gunfire in the distance. Santos waited on the 3rd level of the parking structure, alone. The lieutenant's face showed the strain of a man wrestling with his conscience. They said it was about protecting America. Santos spoke before Harrison could. Fighting corruption, securing our borders, maintaining order. But this, he gestured at the chaos around them, this isn't protection. It's terrorism. Tell me about the nuclear material, Harrison pressed. 4 containers loaded into specialized transport vehicles. Howard's taking personal custody at the mountain facility, but that's not the worst part. Santos swallowed hard. They've got smaller devices already planted in key infrastructure sites. Insurance, they called it. Harrison's blood ran cold. Dead man switches? Santos nodded. If they lose control, they'll blame terrorists, take out the power grid, water supply, everything. Create enough chaos that people will beg for martial law. Martinez emerged from the shadows, her weapon trained. On Santos, how many of your team are still loyal to the Guardians? 3, maybe 4. The rest are like me. They joined thinking they were serving their country. Now they know they're just serving Howard's ambition. Harrison's secure phone buzzed. Chen's voice carried urgent news. Sir, Morrison's people just pushed through. The emergency authorization. Guardian units are moving on federal buildings under official orders. How long until they secure their positions? 20 minutes maximum. And sir, Howard's convoy just went dark. They're completely off-grid. Harrison turned back to Santos. The mountain facility, what's their actual capability? Full command center, heavy security, enough supplies for months. And sir, Santos hesitated, they've got a list. Targets. For immediate elimination once they take control. You're on it. So is your family. Rodriguez's tablet lit up with new alerts. Guardian units converging on our location. Someone talked. Santos. Harrison's voice carried steel. Time to choose. Are you a Guardian or are you a law enforcement officer? The lieutenant drew his weapon and placed it on the ground. My daughter wants to be a cop when she grows up. I want that to mean something again. Gunfire erupted from the level below. Martinez moved to cover the stairs while Rodriguez secured their exit route. Chen, Harrison called into his comm. Execute protocol Sunlight, all channels, all platforms. Let's show everyone what they're really fighting for. Across the city, hidden transmitters powered up. Every television, radio, and emergency broadcast, system still operating, began receiving a signal. The complete Guardian files, their plans, their crimes, their true agenda. Sir, Rodriguez reported, Guardian units are starting to stand down. The evidence dump is working. But Howard's inner circle. They're trapped now, Harrison said. No more shadows to hide in, and trapped animals are the most dangerous. His phone buzzed with a final message from the anonymous number. You've just killed everyone you love, Major. Watch the sunrise. It'll be your last. Harrison turned to his team. They're going to trigger those devices, make it look like a coordinated terror attack. Unless we reach the mountain facility first. Santos stepped forward. I know a way in. Maintenance tunnel, unguarded. It's how they've been moving sensitive materials. Why should we trust you? Martinez demanded. Because my daughter deserves to live in a country where the law means something. Where wearing a badge is about protecting people, not controlling them. Distant explosions rolled across the city. The Guardians were beginning their endgame. Harrison checked his watch. 23:30. Time to choose sides, everyone. We've got one shot at this, one chance to prove that the darkness doesn't win. In the distance, emergency lights painted the clouds. Red. Dawn was coming one way or another. The only question was whether it would bring salvation or destruction. The confession video played on Chen's laptop, Officer Reeves's face illuminated by harsh interrogation room lights. After hours of resistance, the dam had finally broken. It started small, Reeves said, his voice hollow. Traffic stops planting. Evidence looking the other way. Howard called it maintaining order, said we were protecting America from itself. He laughed bitterly. Next thing you know, you're helping move nuclear material, and your soul's so dark you can't even see the line you crossed anymore. Harrison watched the footage from the back seat of their unmarked vehicle as they sped toward the mountain facility. Santos rode shotgun, guiding them through back roads the Guardians had marked for their own escape routes. "Play the segment." "About the facility again," Harrison instructed. Chen skipped forward in the video. Reeves's confession continued. "The mountain, it's not just a bunker, it's a throne room. Howard's been preparing for years. Surveillance systems, weapons caches, enough supplies to last through nuclear winter. He actually believes he's saving democracy by destroying it." Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. "Sir, Guardian units are fragmenting across the board. Martinez's evidence dump hit them hard. But Howard's core team is responding with extreme force. They've already taken out 3 police units that tried to stand down. They're cutting their losses," Harrison said. "How many stayed loyal?" "Maybe 20%, the true believers, but they're the ones with access to the nuclear material and deadman switches." Santos pointed to an unmarked turnoff ahead. "Maintenance access is 2 miles up this road. Howard doesn't know I have clearance. It was Walsh's backup plan if things went south." Harrison's phone lit up with an alert from Chen's monitoring system. The video feed showed Guardian forces engaging in firefights with local police and FBI, units across the city. The conspiracy was collapsing, but its death throes threatened to tear the region apart. "New transmission intercepted," Chen reported. "Howard to all loyal units, execute Protocol Omega. No witnesses, no records, no trace." "He's ordering them to suicide after taking out their targets," Santos translated grimly. "Standard scorched earth tactics." The mountain loomed ahead, its peak lost in low clouds. Somewhere up there, Howard and his inner circle were preparing their final moves in a game they'd spent years setting up. "Chen, status on the nuclear material?" "Confirmed 4 main devices in Howard's convoy." But Santos was right about the smaller charges. Thermal imaging shows at least 12 positions across critical infrastructure. They're rigged for remote detonation. Harrison studied the tactical display. The Guardian forces were now concentrated in 3 areas: the mountain facility, key infrastructure points, and they've got teams moving toward the safe houses. "They're hunting our families. Protective details are holding," Rodriguez assured him, "and with the evidence public, they can't operate freely anymore. Every law enforcement agency in the country is now looking for them." The maintenance access road ended at a concealed entrance. Santos keyed in his code, and heavy steel doors rumbled open. "Once we're inside," Santos warned, "we'll be in their kill zone. Howard's inner circle. They're not just corrupt cops anymore. They're true believers. They'll die before surrendering." "How many?" 20, maybe 30, former special forces, military intelligence. The kind of people who know how to make problems disappear." Harrison checked his weapon, then addressed his team. "The Guardians thought they could use the dark to hide their crimes, but they forgot the most important lesson about darkness." He pointed to the tunnel entrance. "Eventually, dawn always comes, and with it, justice." Chen's laptop pinged with a final piece of decoded data from Reeves's confession. The schematics for the mountain facility's power system appeared on screen. "Sir," she said, "I think I found their weakness, the backup generators. They never expected anyone to reach them. One surgical strike, and we can kill their whole operation." Harrison nodded. "Santos, get us as close as you can. Chen, coordinate with Rodriguez and Martinez. I want every clean unit ready to move the moment those lights go out. The Guardians wanted to play in the dark? Let's see how they handle it when we turn off their lights." The team moved into the tunnel, leaving behind a city tearing itself apart as decades of corruption finally came to light. Ahead lay the heart of the conspiracy, and the men who thought they could hold America hostage to their twisted vision of order. Dawn was still 2 hours away, but in the darkness of that mountain, a different kind of light was about to shine. The light of truth, justice, and the unwavering integrity of those who refused to let the shadows win. The threatening letter appeared on Harrison's phone as they moved through the maintenance tunnel. Printed on official Pentagon letterhead, it had been sent to every major news outlet and law enforcement agency in the country. Urgent, national. Security alert, Major David Harrison, immediate threat assessment. Major Harrison has been identified as the principal actor in a coordinated attack on U.S. infrastructure and command systems. Evidence indicates collaboration with foreign powers to destabilize legitimate authority. All law enforcement agencies are hereby authorized to use lethal force in neutralizing this threat. Any individuals providing aid or shelter to Harrison or his associates will face immediate prosecution under the Patriot Act. General Thomas Howard, Joint Chiefs, Special Command. Desperate move, Harrison commented, showing the letter to his team. They're trying to turn public opinion before the full evidence breaks. Sir, Chen reported through the comm, Guardian media assets are already pushing the narrative. They're painting you as a rogue agent, claiming the blackout was your doing. The tunnel curved deeper into the mountain. Santos led them past maintenance panels and junction boxes, each one a potential ambush point. How much farther to the generator room? Harrison asked. 2 more sections. But we've got a problem. Santos pointed to fresh boot prints in the dust. We're not the first ones through here tonight. Rodriguez checked the thermal imaging. Multiple heat signatures ahead. They've set up an ambush. Harrison studied the tunnel layout on his tablet. They're expecting us to come straight through. Chen, what's above this section? Main security office, where they monitor the... Wait, her voice sharpened. Major, I'm picking up a signal. They're broadcasting something from that room. A video feed appeared on their tablets. Senator Morrison stood at a podium, the American flag behind him, his face grave with manufactured concern. My fellow Americans, in this hour of crisis, we face a terrible truth. Rogue elements within our own government, led by the now disgraced Major David Harrison, have attempted to seize control of critical infrastructure. Their goal, to create chaos and undermine the very foundations of our democracy. They're getting ahead of the story, Harrison said, setting up their narrative before an explosion rocked the tunnel behind them, collapsing their exit route. Forward is the only way now, Santos warned, right into their trap. Harrison's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Director Matthews. Howard just ordered Operation Sundown. God help us all. Chen, what's Operation Sundown? Checking now. Sir, it's their doomsday protocol. If they can't maintain control, they trigger all the nuclear devices, create a crisis so severe that martial law becomes the only option. The implications hit like a physical blow. Howard wasn't just fighting to maintain power anymore. He was ready to irradiate entire cities to achieve his twisted vision of order. Time check, Harrison ordered. 0.15, Rodriguez reported. Less than 2 hours until dawn. Harrison gathered. His team, listen carefully. Everything we've done, every case we've built, every corrupt officer we've exposed, it all comes down to the next 30 minutes. The Guardians think they're the last line of defense against chaos. They're wrong. We are. Real law enforcement, real justice, real integrity. Sir, Chen's voice carried urgency. Thermal imaging shows movement. A lot of it. They're mobilizing everything they have. Good, Harrison replied. Because so are we. Chen, execute Protocol Lightning. Rodriguez, signal Martinez. Santos, on time to prove whose side you're really on. Santos chambered a round in his weapon. For my daughter, sir, for what the badge is supposed to mean. Harrison checked his own weapon, then addressed the team one final time. The Guardians forgot something important about shadows. They only exist because of light. And we're about to turn on every light in this mountain. They moved forward. Toward the ambush. Toward the heart of the conspiracy. Toward a confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but the fate of millions. The time for shadows was over. Dawn was coming, one way or another. The operation plan document glowed on Harrison's tablet. A detailed schematic of the mountain facility's power distribution system. What had started as a simple blueprint had become their roadmap to preventing nuclear disaster. Primary generators. Here, Santos indicated, pointing to a junction ahead. Backup systems are on sub-level 3. They're running everything through a centralized control room, which means one point of failure, Harrison noted. Chen, status on Protocol Lightning? Ready on your mark, sir. Every clean law enforcement unit is in position. The moment their systems go dark, we move. The tunnel opened into a wider maintenance area. Fresh shell casings littered the floor, signs of recent weapons training. These weren't just corrupt cops anymore. They were a private army preparing for war. Contact, Rodriguez whispered. 3 o'clock, upper catwalk. A Guardian patrol moved above them, their weapons equipped with thermal sights. Harrison's team pressed into the shadows, their specialized gear masking their heat signatures. Sir, Chen's voice crackled through the comm. Intercepted transmission from Howard to Morrison. They're accelerating Operation Sundown. Trigger sequence initiating in 15 minutes. Harrison checked his watch. 0030. Not enough time to disarm all the devices manually. We have to shut down their control system. Movement, Santos warned. Big group heading toward the main security hub. Through gaps in the maintenance area's ceiling, they could see figures rushing through the facility above. Howard's voice, carried down, sharp with authority. Secure the nuclear controls. No one gets near that room. Sounds like we found our target, Harrison said. Chen, time to light them up. Protocol Lightning initiating now. Across the region, every law enforcement agency moved simultaneously. Clean units that had been standing by launched coordinated strikes on Guardian positions. The evidence they'd gathered went live on every available platform. And in the mountain facility, carefully planted electromagnetic pulses destroyed their communications array. Alarms blared as the facility's systems registered the attack. Howard's voice rang out again, tinged with desperation. Get those backups. Online, we need those controls. Sir, Rodriguez reported, main power room is lightly guarded. They've concentrated forces around the control center. Harrison nodded. Just like we wanted. Santos, you're with me. We're taking out the power. Rodriguez, get to the east access point. When the lights go down, move on the control room. They split up, moving through the shadows of the facility's infrastructure. Above, boots pounded on metal walkways as Guardian forces scrambled to respond to multiple threats. Harrison and Santos reached the primary generator room. 2 guards stood watch, their faces showing the strain of recent events. You take left, I'll take right, Harrison whispered. Non-lethal if possible. They're still law enforcement officers. Santos nodded. They moved in perfect sync, years of training evident in their fluid motions. The guards went down without a sound, quickly secured with zip ties. Primary power room secured, Harrison reported. Chen, status on the facility. 37 Guardian forces confirmed inside. Howard and Morrison are in the control room with their core team. They're arming the nuclear devices, all of them. Harrison's blood ran cold. Even cornered, Howard was willing to irradiate millions to maintain control. Rodriguez, are you in position? Affirmative. East access secured. Ready on your mark. Harrison connected the charges they'd brought to the facility's main power distribution panel. Each one was precisely placed to create a cascading failure that would overwhelm the backup systems. Chen, give me a facility-wide broadcast channel. You're live, sir. Harrison's voice echoed through the mountain's corridors. Attention all Guardian forces. This is Major David Harrison. In 30 seconds, this facility will lose all power. When that happens, every law enforcement agency in 3 states will move to secure their targets. You have 1 chance to surrender. After that, he let the silence hang. In the distance, they could hear Howard shouting orders, trying to maintain control of his collapsing empire. Charges set, Santos reported. Harrison checked his watch 1 final time. Remember your oath, everyone. The real one. To protect and serve. 3, 2, 1. He pressed the detonator. The charges fired in sequence, and darkness swept through the mountain like a tide. Emergency lights sputtered and died as the backups failed to engage. In the sudden darkness, Harrison's voice carried clearly, Dawn's coming, General Howard. And this time, there's nowhere left to hide. The final assault on the Guardian's stronghold had begun. The press conference footage played across every major network as Harrison and his team moved through the darkened facility. On screen, Director Matthews stood before a wall of reporters, revealing the full scope of the Guardian conspiracy. "What we've uncovered is unprecedented," Matthews announced, his voice steady despite the gravity of his words. "A shadow organization operating within our own government and law enforcement agencies, attempting nothing less than the subversion of American democracy." In the mountain facility's corridors, Harrison led his team toward the control center. Night vision showed Guardian forces in disarray, some surrendering, others taking defensive positions. "Chen, status report," Harrison whispered. "Clean units have secured 23 Guardian positions across the region. Martinez has control of police headquarters. But, sir, we're getting readings from the nuclear devices. They're armed and counting down." Through the darkness, gunfire erupted ahead. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. "Contact, Howard's inner circle is making a push for the emergency exit. They've got hardened cases with them, likely the trigger mechanisms." "Stop them at all costs," Harrison ordered. "Santos, with me, we're taking the direct route." They moved swiftly through maintenance corridors, guided by Santos's intimate knowledge of the facility. Above, they could hear Howard shouting orders, his voice tinged with desperation. "You're destroying everything we built." Howard's words echoed through the ventilation system. 20 years of planning, of preparing to save this country from itself. Harrison's team emerged onto a catwalk overlooking the main control center. Below, Howard stood surrounded by monitors, some still running on battery power. Senator Morrison was beside him, his polished exterior cracked by fear. "It's over, General," Harrison called out. "Your entire network is exposed. Guardian forces are surrendering across the board." "Over?" Howard laughed, the sound brittle with madness. "Look at the monitors, Major. 8 minutes until detonation. Even if you take us down, you can't stop what's coming. The country will see what happens when order breaks down." "Order?" Harrison's voice carried through the darkness. "You betrayed every oath you ever took, corrupted good officers, turned them into thugs. That's not order. It's tyranny." Morrison stepped forward, ever the politician. "Be reasonable. Major, think about your family. We can still make a deal. There's always room for negotiation. Like you negotiated with Officer Martinez's daughter, with Santos's family. How many lives did you threaten to build this nightmare?" Movement caught Harrison's eye. Guardian forces were trying to flank their position, but Rodriguez was already there, his team silently neutralizing the threat. 7 minutes, Howard announced. "When those devices detonate, the people will beg for martial law. They'll welcome it. Sometimes democracy needs a firm hand to survive." "That's where you're wrong," Harrison replied. "Democracy survives because of people like Martinez, like Santos, people who remember what the badge really means." "Chen," he subvocalized into his comm, "tell me you've got something. Working on the detonator frequencies. But, sir, they're using a rotating encryption. Each device has its own failsafe." Howard must have seen something in Harrison's expression. "Brilliant, isn't it? Even if you stop one, you can't stop them all. Not in time." "Maybe not," Harrison agreed, "but I can stop you." He nodded to Santos, who triggered the charges they'd planted in the lower levels. The explosion rocked the facility, designed not to collapse it, but to destroy specific systems. "What? What did you do?" Morrison demanded as emergency lighting failed completely. "Destroyed your backup servers," Harrison explained, moving down to their level. "Every bit of operational data, every blackmail file, every insurance policy. You thought you had gone." "Doesn't matter," Howard snarled, drawing his weapon. 6 minutes, that's my insurance policy." The sound of multiple weapons being charged echoed through the darkness. Rodriguez's team had the high ground, Martinez's people covered the exits, and Santos's knowledge of the facility had let them position snipers perfectly. "Your choice, General." Harrison said quietly. "Surrender now, help us stop those detonations, and maybe you face life in prison instead of the death penalty. Fight, and, well, there are a lot of good officers here who've seen exactly what your order really means." Howard's finger tightened on the trigger. In the dim emergency lighting, his face showed the strain of a man seeing his life's work crumble. "I served my country," he whispered. "Everything I did. It was for America." "No," Harrison replied. "It was for power. And now, you've lost even that." The next few seconds would determine the fate of millions. In the darkness of a mountain fortress, a corrupt general faced the consequences of his choices, while the clock ticked down toward dawn or destruction. The new department policy manual lay open on Harrison's tablet as he faced down Howard, its pages a stark contrast between the corruption they'd uncovered and the reforms they hoped to implement. But first, they had to survive the next 5 minutes. "Chen!" Harrison called out, keeping his weapon trained on Howard. "Talk to me about those detonators." "Each device has its own authentication sequence," she reported, "but they're all coordinated through— Wait, sir, there's a pattern in the encryption." Howard's expression flickered. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. "You used the same base code, didn't you?" Harrison pressed. "The one from your Special Forces days, because you never could trust anyone else's work." "How did you— I read your file, General. Every mission, every operation. You always insisted on controlling the technical details yourself. Your greatest strength and your fatal flaw." Morrison looked between them, his political instincts sensing the shift. "Thomas, what is he talking about?" "Chen," Harrison continued, "run the decryption using Howard's old mission parameters. Cross-reference with Operation Desert Hawk, 1991. Howard lunged for a control panel, but Santos was faster. The corrupt general went down hard, his weapon skittering across the floor. "Got it!" Chen's voice carried triumph. "Decryption sequence accepted. We can stop the countdown, but we need the authorization codes." Harrison knelt beside Howard. "Last chance, General. Those codes, or the death penalty for 12 counts of attempted nuclear terrorism. Your choice." "You don't understand." Howard spat. "The system we built, it was necessary. The world is chaos. Someone has to maintain order by becoming the very thing you claim to be fighting. Look around you, General. Look what your order has created." Rodriguez's team had secured the remaining Guardian forces. Through the facility's windows, they could see police helicopters approaching, their spotlights cutting through the darkness. 4 minutes, Chen warned. Morrison broke first. "The codes are in his watch. It's a biometric safe, keyed to his DNA. Please, I didn't sign up for nuclear terrorism. This wasn't supposed to go this far." Harrison nodded to Santos, who secured the watch. Howard didn't resist as they pressed his thumb to the tiny scanner. "Codes received," Chen reported. "Beginning deactivation sequence." Howard seemed to deflate, years of carefully maintained control crumbling. "You've doomed us all. When the real crisis comes, when order breaks down completely, then we'll face it the right way," Harrison replied. "With transparency, with justice, with real integrity." "Devices disarmed," Chen announced. "All. Locations reporting safe status." Morrison was already trying to salvage something. "Major Harrison, perhaps we could discuss arrangements. My cooperation could be valuable." "Senator, the only discussing you'll be doing is with a federal prosecutor. Rodriguez, get them out of here." As his team secured the prisoners, Harrison turned to the facility's main display. The screens showed Guardian units surrendering across the region, clean officers reclaiming their departments. "Sir," Chen called out, "you need to see this." She sent a video feed to his tablet. Outside police stations across 3 states, citizens were gathering, not to protest, but to support the officers who had chosen justice over corruption. Signs read, "Thank you for your real service, and this is what integrity looks like." "Martinez reports all precincts secure," Rodriguez added. "They're implementing the new protocols now. Real oversight, real accountability." Harrison picked up Howard's fallen badge, its surface scratched in the struggle. Santos, how many officers do you think were like you? Good people who got caught up in this because they thought they were serving a greater good? Too many, Santos replied. But now they have a chance to remember why they took the oath in the first place. Through the facility's windows, dawn was beginning to lighten the sky. Harrison looked at the new department policy manual again, its pages outlining a future built on transparency and true service. Chen, send word to all departments. As of this moment, every Guardian protocol is suspended. We rebuild from the ground up, real training, real community engagement, real justice. And the corrupted officers? Santos asked. They face justice like anyone else, but the ones who help us rebuild, who demonstrate real change, they get a chance to earn back their badges. The right way. The first rays of sun broke over the mountain, illuminating a facility that had been built to hide corruption, but would now stand as a monument to its defeat. Dawn had come, and with it the chance to rebuild something worth protecting. The court documents filled 3 thick binders on Harrison's desk, each page detailing another facet of the Guardian conspiracy. 2 weeks had passed since the confrontation at the mountain facility, and the federal prosecution was building what would become one of the largest criminal cases in American history. Final count, Chen reported, reviewing the indictment list. 47 police officers, 23 federal agents, 6 Pentagon officials, 3 senators including Morrison, and 12 civilian conspirators, all facing multiple federal charges. Harrison studied the prosecution's summary. Howard sat at the center of the conspiracy chart, his web of influence extending through every level of government. How's the plea deal process going? Better than expected, Rodriguez answered, entering with a fresh stack of documents. Once we exposed the nuclear plot, the lower-level conspirators couldn't distance themselves fast enough. They're practically fighting to testify against Howard and Morrison. Martinez joined them, now wearing the insignia of acting police chief. We've identified 93 officers who were coerced into cooperation. Following the new protocols, we're reviewing each case individually. Those who show genuine remorse and commitment to reform are being considered for the rehabilitation program. And Santos? Harrison asked. Leading the training reforms himself, Martinez replied. His testimony about how the Guardians corrupted good officers is becoming the foundation of our new ethics curriculum. Harrison's phone buzzed with a message from Director Matthews. Howard's lawyers are making noise about national security. Time to play our final card. Chen, prepare the full evidence package. Every document, every recording, every piece of testimony. It's time the public saw exactly how deep this went. Sir, she hesitated. Some of this could shake public confidence. In law enforcement. Good, Harrison replied. Real confidence has to be earned. Real trust comes from accountability. The evidence release hit like a tidal wave. News networks ran continuous coverage as the full scope of the Guardian conspiracy came to light. But something unexpected happened. Instead of destroying faith in law enforcement, it sparked a national conversation about reform. Latest polls, Rodriguez reported, pulling up the data. 87% support for the new oversight measures. 92% approval for the rehabilitation program. People aren't just angry about the corruption, they're invested in fixing it. Harrison watched through his office window as a new class of recruits arrived for training. Among them were former Guardian collaborators who had chosen redemption over immunity deals. Chief Martinez, he called out, how are the new protocols working? Every arrest logged and reviewed, body cameras that officers can't disable, regular psychological evaluations, real community oversight boards. She smiled. It's what policing should have been all along. His phone buzzed again, the federal prosecutor this time. Howard changed his plea, guilty on all counts, no deals, no reduced sentences. He says he wants to take responsibility. Harrison thought back to their confrontation in the mountain. Sometimes, even in the darkest corruption, a spark of integrity remained. "What about Morrison?" Chen asked. "Trying to bargain still, offering to expose other corrupt officials, but with Howard's confession and the evidence we recovered, he'll face justice like everyone else," Harrison finished. "No special deals for politicians." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across his desk, highlighting the court documents that detailed the end of the Guardian conspiracy. Each page represented not just crimes exposed, but lessons learned about power, corruption, and the constant vigilance required to maintain true justice. "Sir," Rodriguez called from the doorway, "they're ready for your testimony." Harrison gathered his files. In courtroom 3, Howard and his inner circle would face the full weight of their crimes. But more importantly, they would face the people they had betrayed, the citizens they had sworn to protect, the officers they had corrupted, the nation they had nearly destroyed in their pursuit of control. "You know," Martinez said as they walked to the courthouse, "some of the younger officers have started calling this the Harrison Doctrine. The idea that real law enforcement means serving truth and justice, not power." Harrison shook his head. "It's not about me. It's about every officer who remembers their oath, every citizen who demands better, every person who chooses integrity over easy answers." They reached the courthouse steps, where reporters waited to document justice being served. The Guardian conspiracy was ending not in shadows, but in the full light of day, exactly where justice belonged. The department award gleamed in the morning light, its inscription reading, "For outstanding service in defense of justice and integrity." 1 year had passed since the Guardian conspiracy's exposure, and Harrison stood before a new generation of law enforcement officers at the academy graduation. "The badge isn't about power," he told them, his voice carrying across the auditorium. "It's about responsibility, trust, service." 1 year ago, we learned how fragile those ideals can be, and how vital it is to protect them. In the front row, Santos sat with his daughter, now a cadet herself. Behind them, Martinez and Rodriguez represented the new leadership that had emerged from the crisis. Chen monitored the event's security from her position as the newly appointed Director of Digital Integrity. "The Guardian conspiracy taught us that corruption doesn't happen overnight," Harrison continued. "It grows in shadows, feeds on fear, thrives on the small compromises we make when we convince ourselves that the ends justify the means." The cadets sat straighter, their faces showing the serious understanding of those who had learned from history's harsh lessons. Many of them had witnessed the conspiracy's impact firsthand. "But we learned something else too," Harrison said. "We learned that integrity isn't just a word we put on badges. It's a choice we make every day, a commitment to serve truth and justice no matter the cost." Through the windows, they could see the city awakening. Police officers patrolled alongside community representatives. Body cameras recorded every interaction. Oversight boards reviewed complaints with real authority. The changes weren't just institutional, they were cultural. "The world you're entering isn't perfect," Harrison acknowledged. "We still face challenges, still confront those who would abuse power. But now we face them in the light, with transparency, accountability, and an unwavering commitment to justice." He gestured to the award, then to his badge. "These symbols mean something again, not because of what we stopped, but because of what we started. A new way of serving, a new understanding of what it means to protect and defend." Santos's daughter raised her hand. "Major Harrison, how do we make sure something like the Guardian conspiracy never happens again?" Harrison smiled. "By remembering that the greatest threat to justice isn't always external. Sometimes it's the quiet voice that suggests cutting corners, looking the other way, accepting necessary evils. Your strongest weapon against corruption isn't your gun or your badge, it's your integrity." As the ceremony concluded, Harrison watched the new officers take their oaths. Each word carried weight, meaning purpose. They weren't just repeating phrases. They were committing to the principles that had defeated the Guardians. "They get it," Martinez said, joining him at the podium. "They understand what we're building here." "They better," Rodriguez added, "because the world's watching. Everything we do now sets the standard." Harrison nodded, thinking of Howard in his prison. Cell, Morrison serving his sentence, the corrupted officers facing justice. But he also thought of those who had chosen redemption, who now taught ethics classes or served on oversight boards, turning their mistakes into lessons for others. "The greatest victory," he told his team, "isn't that we stopped a conspiracy. It's that we created something better in its place. Real justice, real service, real hope." Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, illuminating a city that had faced its darkness and chosen light. The Guardian conspiracy had tried to build an empire of shadows, but in the end, they had only succeeded in showing why transparency and integrity mattered more than power. In police stations across the country, the new protocols stood as testimony to lessons learned. In academies like this one, future officers learned about the thin line between authority and abuse. And in the hearts of those who served, the badge had regained its true meaning, not as a symbol of power, but as a promise to protect justice itself. The ceremony ended, but its impact would ripple through generations of law enforcement, because in the end, the greatest guardian of democracy wasn't force or fear. It was the unwavering integrity of those who chose to serve it.